but he's dead. Eaten by a dragon in war.
We've been exiled here to the kitchen area of the Paradox Interactive offices in Stockholm. And that takes us to the subject of this interview, which is Warlock II, the Exiled. First, let's start with the first game. What did you think about it when it launched, and sort of what sort of idea did you have for making a sequel?
What we thought about the first game was that the market really, there was time in the market for a turn-based fantasy war game. Since there hadn't been a good war game in a while, the game fared well. The reviews were pretty good. The fans really liked the tone of the game and the action-packedness of it. And looking back now, I think it's roughly 2 years since it released. We wanted to do a sequel to fix the small flaws that the first one had, and do it with the same developers to kind of make a pretty straightforward sequel of a good game that we think deserved more attention than it got. It got some good attention, but the second one we hope will get even more, since it's a very good follow-up, I would say.
So what were those areas that you felt could do with a little bit more work?
Content. It could have more content than the vanilla Warlock at release. We added some content later in the DLCs, which were really good. We also added a multiplayer after release, which we won't do now. We will have a fully functional, expanded multiplayer experience at release this time, which is something a lot of the fans have asked for, and we think is really important to this kind of game, since the multiplayer experience in these kinds of games, these kinds of war games, the difference between the single player and multiplayer experience is only in how smart your opponent is, which is why we kind of want that at release, because you should be able to, once you've managed to beat the AI, you should be able to try to beat your friends as well.
Hopefully that's the highest difficulty level,
yes,
right?
Yes.
if the players are good enough.
They will be eventually.
So this sounds pretty much like, you gotta have some new features as well. It can't just be sort of owning your skills on what's already there. So what kind of new twists are you bringing to it?
We've expanded with the new game mode. In Warlock 1 we only had the let's duke it out on a huge world map. Now we have that, but we also have something that is similar to a single-player campaign. It's the game mode we call the Exiled. Story-wise, the world shattered after the first game. You were exiled to a remote island, blah blah blah, and now you're fighting your way back to the shards of the main world. So the big difference is that you start on a remote, small world where you have a very strong foothold, but also limited resources. So from that island, you have to work your way out through a net of different worlds and find your way through to the final world where the boss awaits you. So this forces you to play in a different style, since you just can't steamroll all over the map like you could in the first world.
Is it also a way to sort of tell a story a little bit more, or sort of have it a little bit more linear and sort of know where the player is progressing?
A bit. I mean, this is not in any way a story-driven game. The lore is extremely fun. Inoko has done a great job writing backstories for all the units and all the mages, but the story is second to the gameplay. But it is another way. It is another way of playing. I wouldn't say it's linear in the same way you have to progress from point A to point B, but since the setup of the worlds and the configurations of the smaller worlds is generated at the start of each game, you will have a very different experience each time, since you will be forced to go through different worlds in different orders and meet different kinds of monsters. I would say that the environment is a much bigger threat in this game mode than it is in the sandbox mode, where the main enemy is the other great mages. But in this mode, you're also fighting against the environment a lot more.
So this new sort of setting, does that does that give you new units or things like that, or is it the same sort of basic setup that you control, or?
You start with your one city, and then you have to progress, as I said, out through these worlds. And what we have added is that we've added a scalable cap to how many cities you can have. So you're much more forced to choose where you want to put your cities, what resources you want to focus on, and that also forces you to choose in what kind of shard worlds you want to place your cities. Yeah. And depending on how you do that, you'll also kind of get different units, because how you focus your cities kind of forces you to make choices about what kind of units you want to build. Since it's logistically going to be very hard for you to have your main unit producing city far back in the netherworlds, because then you won't be able to supply your front line, so to speak.
So is it a case of sort of adapting and moving your sort of unit producing cities up, or should you always, or how do you want to, what's the good way of doing that?
It depends on how you want to play it, because the closer to the final world you get, the more precious the resources will be. So you want unit producing cities there as well. So it depends on if you're a very aggressive player, or like me, kind of cowardly player. Play it safe, take your time, and slowly build up a big army of weaker units to try to like force your way through, and then build ultra mega power units later.
All right. So you mentioned, of course, that it's the same developer working on the game. It's set in a world we're all sort of in a universe we're all used to and have played a lot. So what's the roadmap ahead with the game? When can we expect to see it?
We're gonna show some big stuff at PDXCon in January, and that's also when we're gonna start. We're gonna start trickling out some screenshots now. We're in I wouldn't say that we're in polish mode yet, but we will get there very soon. Feature-wise, it's kind of nailed down now, and we will start working on some extra stuff that I think fans will be very happy to know about at PDXCon. But we're slowly wrapping up the development to focus on polish before release, and then bring out the big announcements closer to PDXCon.
And is that why you're being so secretive in this interview? That you got this stuff that you really want to tell us, but you can't?
A bit. What I can say is that when we look at the Paradox, the Warlock forums, at our forums, and look at what people want, what people say that a follow-up to the first game really needs, we check a lot of those boxes. Not every single one, but I would say that we check like almost 80% of them. So I think everyone, me and Fred included, will be very happy with this game.
It is sort of a game that it's always been close to the heart of Fred, right?
It is. It's excuse me. And I think a lot of people over here that isn't used to this kind of hex-based war games still really like Warlock, because it's a lot easier to get into than you think by just looking over the shoulder at someone, because it's for a strategy game, it's incredibly action-packed. I mean, you don't have to wait 50 turns before you use your units, because there's a threat right at your doorstep, and you have to throw stuff at it directly, and the minute-to-minute gameplay is awesome.
All right. So have you said something about a date, something second quarter or something like that, or?
No, and the release date is not official yet, but we're looking at late Q1, Q2.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Warlock II, the Exiled. More monsters, more spells, pure ecstasy.